So good afternoon to one and all present here. A warm welcome to you on the fifth day of this webinar series. Um, hope I'm audible. Are you all able to hear me?
Yes, ma'am. Good afternoon.
Yeah, good afternoon. So thank you one and all. Thank you for supporting me throughout this webinar series. There's a lot of learning happening from both the sides. Today what we will do is let us be more take it more in the practical way, because as I told you, tomorrow I will be showing one entire examples of how it has to be presented in a thesis. So today what I will be doing is entirely I will be telling you how data analysis has to be shown along with testing of hypothesis. So this is what we will be doing today. Now, before we go to what has to be done today, let me just give a recap of what has been done yesterday. Yesterday, we took a lot about what is actually a research instrument. So, if we take a research instrument or a measuring instrument, that is nothing but your questionnaire. So, I told you that there are, it's always better that you develop a scale. So, scale development is nothing but preparation of your questionnaire. And once that is prepared or it is developed, we again have to validate it. So again, for validation, you have to go in for a statistical analysis. Now, after doing this, once you collect the data, now that raw data, it has to be cleaned, and when you are entering the data, you make sure that you tabulated it using certain alphanumerical characters for each and every variable. This is how we do it under data cleaning and data entering of that data, that we call that as data coding. Now usually once the data is coded, uh, as far as I told you, that can be done by the researcher himself or herself. There's nothing that there is somebody else that, of course, you can take assistance from somebody, but it's always better that as a part of the research, it's always better that you enter the data so that you minimize your errors. So once you've entered the data, what is the next step that we have to do? Now, once we've entered the data, please do remember that all your data, whatever you have taken, it can be analyzed or it can be interpreted in two ways. One is called as the descriptive statistics, and the other one is called as the inferential statistics. So whatever the data you have got now, that you are going to analyze it and give your interpretations. Then simultaneously, at a later part of your research, you will give the findings along with the suggestion and conclusion. Now, before that, you have to get a clear picture of what is your descriptive statistics and what is your inferential statistics. Now, apart from that, again, you have what is called as a sample summary. Okay, so your entire data analysis can be split into three parts here. One is called as your sample summary, which it's always better to divide it as a separate, or it's called as a demographic profile. That is one part. The descriptive statistics is your second part, and the third part is your inferential statistics. So whenever you're presenting, also make sure that data analysis is presented in this format. It's a very good format, and your testing of hypothesis will come under inferential statistics. So this is the three parts that you have to make when it comes to a data analysis. I will be very happy if many of the researchers can present this data analysis plan in the form of a table. That means to say if you are testing descriptive statistics, what is the tool and technique you're using? If you are using, in the end, I have done one table the same thing, you can use that type of table in your particular research or thesis also. So just make a table where you will be showing demographic profile, what is the tool that you are using, descriptive statistics, what is the tool you are using, and for inferential statistics, what are the tools that you are using. Tools is nothing but your statistical analysis, how you are doing it, what are the various techniques. It can be correlation, it can be regression, it can be ANOVA, it can be t-test, whatever you are using, that you will be showing it in the form of a table. Now let us come to the first aspect of it, that is called as your demographic profile. Now what do you mean by a demographic profile? That is nothing but your sample summary. If you remember in the research instrument or the questionnaire, I told you that the first part of it must be your demographic profile. So I've also sent you that in the mobile, in your WhatsApp group. You can note that also. I've sent you one research instrument which has not been validated. It's a good questionnaire, only thing it's not been validated yet. So you can use that as an example. Now, please note there, the first part of it, that is your age, the income, the education qualification, the designation, the type of the industry, then what is the size of the employees, size of the company. All this is given initially. This is the initial data that you collect about the sample. Now this is called as a demographic profile. Now this demographic profile, you are going to give a statistics for that in the form of a frequency. That is sufficient. Okay, so just like how you do under basic statistics, like let us say, these many number are employees who classify below 100 employees. Suppose I've taken 100 to 500 employees, how many, that is how many number, what is the frequency that you can find out. If it is 500 to 1000, what is the frequency? If it is 1000 and above, what is the frequency? So you keep finding frequencies and you represent it in the form of a graph. Okay. Now, what is the difference between analysis and interpretation? Now, analysis just describes what is given in the table. Whereas if you are drawing a conclusion out of it, that is called as an interpretation. Please remember, there are many people who say you write analysis and interpretation for a demographic profile. Not required. Demographic profile is only showing you what the sample represents. That means to say what is the frequency. You need not write interpretation or inference for a sample summary. What, I mean, what is that the table is stating? Let us say the table is stating that most of the employees fall between 500 to 1000 employees. That is it. Or you can just say that the frequency or the number of employees in companies below 100 is so much. Okay. Another frequency, you can say that so and so number of employees is so much. So this is called as analysis. But you need not draw any inference out of it. So for a demographic profile, it is sufficient for you if you are writing the analysis. More than sufficient. Okay.
Saying your voice is breaking. Can you ask if you're audible again?
Am I audible again? I'm just asking because it seems many participants are not able to hear. Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am, you're audible.
Because I'm getting messages that for many of them, my voice is breaking.
Audio, ma'am.
Okay, let me continue with this. Okay, so I'm going to continue now. Now, this is the first aspect, that is called as your sample summary. Again, tomorrow, while showing you the thesis, I will show you how this sample summary has to be done. I will just show you one example for that. You can note that also. Now, the second important thing what we need to know is the descriptive statistics. So what is this descriptive statistics? Is describing the data. Now, how do you show descriptive statistics? Now, for each of your constructs, you will have to find out descriptive statistics. Now, let us say, for example, I will take the same example, the role of human resource practices in employee well-being. Okay, the role of human resource practices in employee well-being. This is my title. Now, how do I prepare? So for what I will do is this role of HR practices is my construct. Employee well-being again is my construct. So what I will do is, okay, so I take role of HR practices, identify the dimensions for that. Let us take, I have identified dimensions like work environment or participation or compensation, involvement, training and development. I've identified all these dimensions. Now, under each dimension, I have a set of items. We are no more going to call it as variables. We will call it as items, because for statistical purposes, variables are called as items here. Now, when we take each and every item, now as far as possible for each dimension, you have to calculate the mean and the standard deviation. Now, let us say, for example, involvement is one dimension. Okay. You can say that participation is one dimension, compensation is one dimension, and motivation is another dimension. Now, let us say I find out the mean and the standard deviation for each of these dimensions. So this is how I have to go about. So for each and every dimension, I will find out what is the mean and the standard deviation. There I can give my interpretation or inference saying, which among these have the highest mean, which among these have the highest standard deviation, and then what you infer out of it. Now, this is where your previous studies or your review of literature will help. Please remember, whenever you are having, this kind of, study, there will be some other studies which are there. So whatever answer that you're getting, you can also put it saying that, just a minute, I just would like to mute all the participants. I'm still getting a few participants who are not muted. Okay, so let me continue with this. Now, what happens is, for this kind of descriptive statistics, it is very important for you to check the previous studies. So whatever previous studies has been made, you take that previous studies, and on the basis of that, you can write inference stating that this research, whatever has been conducted by me as a researcher, has also been supported by other researchers, and you can also give certain evidences. This can be done under descriptive statistics. So what do we do under descriptive statistics? We only find out the mean, standard deviation, and we describe the data through mean and standard deviation. So you have to take each and every dimension and find out the descriptive statistics. Okay. So let us say, for example, if employee well-being has around 2 dimensions. Now I take these 2 dimensions and say which dimension is, has a greater value. Now let us say I take something like organizational performance. Now, in organizational performance, I have taken, let us say, just an example, customer satisfaction as one variable, market share as one variable, profitability as a variable. So what do? Under each one, I find out the mean and standard deviation, and I state which dimension has a better chance, or it's a good measure. So these kind of inferences can be given, but never give inferences for sample summary or your demographic profile. For descriptive statistics, this is the only analysis that you need to do. Suppose you have taken 3 or 4 dimensions under a particular construct, then all that you have to do is just check whether that particular whichever is the dimension, that particular dimension is better or not. Okay, so this is under descriptive statistics. Now let us come to the third one, that is your inferential statistics. Now your inferential statistics will contain all your analysis of your objectives. Okay, now if your objectives, that's why I'm using the word if your objectives are using demographic profiles as the item that has to be tested, okay, then only use it for testing of hypothesis, only if your objective is given. Otherwise, please do not, at any cost, please do not use that. Never use that and try to do an analysis using ANOVA or t-test. Never do that. Okay, I'll just give you an example. Now I'm doing on the role of HR practices. Okay, now under role of HR practices, I would have collected data on the designation of the employee, the income level of the employee, and the educational qualification of the employee, and the experience of the employee. Okay, now I can formulate a hypothesis. Let us say, for example, I formulate a null hypothesis. What is that null hypothesis? It states that there is no relationship or between, that's why I'm using the word no relationship between, okay, the experience and the education level. The education level and the experience of the managers. This is my null hypothesis. Now, only if my objective states that I am trying to find out a relationship between the role of, under the role of the manager, the relationship between what is the educational qualification and what is the experience of the manager, until and unless I have that objective, don't ever test such hypothesis. It must be mentioned in the objective and then you're testing. Otherwise, you will be testing so many hypotheses. So as far as possible, make sure that if it is given in the objectives, then only you test the hypothesis. Otherwise, your main concentration should be on what? It should be on your constructs. It should be on proving the hypothesis of your construct. I want to show that there is a relationship between the role of HR practices on employee well-being. That should be my hypothesis. Okay, so here please remember that test of hypothesis, as far as possible, make sure that as a researcher you are testing more relating to the constructs. So the focus should be on that. Okay, now let us come to the testing of hypothesis. I will take up the same example, okay, of testing of hypothesis. Now let us say I'm framing something like there is a relationship between, or I want to know whether there is a relationship between the experience and the education level of the managers. Now this is one hypothesis, or this is one statement I want to know. I want to know that whether the education level, when it is high for the employees, whether their experience level is also high or no. Okay, now I want to know whether there is a relationship between education and experience. Please remember that when I'm formulating a null hypothesis, what is that I need to formulate for null hypothesis? is mainly to show that my observed data disagrees with the null hypothesis. This is the basic premises on which I'm forming a null hypothesis. That's why I'm telling you, as a researcher, concentrate more on your null hypothesis. Alternate hypothesis means it's not that I'm accepting my alternate hypothesis. It is just falsifying my null hypothesis. This is something what is most important for a researcher. So whenever you're writing your thesis, please make sure that you write down that the null hypothesis is rejected. The null hypothesis, that should be your conclusion ultimately while you are testing the hypothesis. So yesterday we discussed in detail about what is probability value of estimate, this error, that is your p value. Then how do you take this type 1 error, that is the alpha, and then you compare the alpha and the p value. If the p value is less than the alpha value, then you say that there is a statistically significant relationship and between the groups, and null hypothesis gets rejected. If p is more than a, that means to say that there is no statistical difference between the groups and null hypothesis gets accepted. What happens when null hypothesis gets accepted? That means to say that there is no relationship between the whatever the educational level and also the experience. Okay, I'll just give you another example. Let us say attendance of the students and the marks scored. I want to know whether there is a relationship between the marks scored and the attendance of the students. I say that there is no relationship between the attendance of the students and the marks scored. No relationship. So what do? I test it, and then ultimately I find that whatever my observed data is there, okay, that doesn't differ much from whatever is the values that are given, then I say that my null hypothesis is rejected or accepted. Okay, so this is what we do under testing of hypothesis. Now let me go to this. This is something what you people need to actually know, that is your test of significance. That means to say what test I have to use. Now before that, the best thing that what every researcher has to do, or the first step what every researcher has to do, is statistically find out whether your data is normally distributed or not. So yesterday we saw that particular bell-shaped curve. So the first step that a researcher must know is whether your sample means fall into a particular bell-shaped curve. If it falls, then yours is a normal distribution. Of course, now you need not even break your head on finding out whether it's normal or not. There are a lot of even under SPSS, under R, you just have to find out whether they qualify the normalcy test. So this is the first step that every researcher has to do once you get your data. So once you get your data, what is the first step that you have to do is find out whether your data is a normal distribution or a not normal distribution. Okay. Now one more thing is, if it is a normal distribution, then find out first what type of data you mainly have. Okay, and for what you are testing your hypothesis. If you are testing your hypothesis mainly for ordinal data, what do you mean by ordinal data? Ranking, if you remember, ordinal data or interval data, like how we discussed yesterday, the intervals, mainly the Likert scale. I told you there are 5-point scale, or you can use a 7-point scale, or you have class intervals. These are all called as interval data. Now, if you're having interval data or ordinal data, you have to use parametric tests. So parametric tests are basically used for normal distributions. Now, under normal distribution, the most used is your t-test. Okay. Now, why I'm telling you the most used is your t-test is because as of by and large, if you want to find out the difference between the means of one independent variable and another independent variable, then it's always better to use a t-test. Now this t-test is called as a student t-test. Now if you note here, I have given what is the formula for t-test. It's very simple. So whatever you have, your sample mean minus your population mean divided by the standard deviation of your sample mean divided by the root of your sample size. This is the formula for t-test. Of course, many a times what happens, you might not know the standard deviation of the population mean. In that time, you can take the standard deviation of the sample mean. Okay, so what is the formula? You have x bar, that is the mean of your sample minus the mean of your population divided by either your standard deviation of your population or the standard deviation of your sample. This divided by root n. Now this is mainly used where your sample is less than 30. Where your sample is less than 30. So what we do is we keep taking the means. Okay, so we want to find out whether there is a significant difference between the means of two groups. So let us say, for example, I am comparing urban and rural students. I am comparing male and female. So I say that there is a significant difference between the IQ level of male and female students. I say that there is a significant difference of the IQ levels of urban children and rural children. So what am I doing here? I'm having two groups. And for these two groups, I'm trying to find out the significant difference. Please remember, in case of hypothesis, there are only two things that you will have to find out, either the significant difference or the relationship. So my null hypothesis will be there is no significant difference between the IQ level of male and female. So what do? I have male as one group, I have female as another group. I find out whether there is a difference between the means of the groups. And this is your t-test that we are trying to do. Now t-test is useful when the population, when the sample size is very less. Now, when the sample size is more, okay, and most important thing is when there are two population means. So, considerably large populations and sample size also is very large, then the z-test is used. Please remember, for the t-test and the z-test, the formula remains the same. There's no change in the formula. And one more thing is, manually it is very easy for us to do only t-test. But when it comes to a z-test and all that, for an f-test, you can always go in for a software, okay, a statistical package which is going to help you into all this. But please do understand, as a researcher, all that you need to do is try to understand when I have to use a t-test. So when do we use a t-test? We use it only when you want to find out the difference between the means of two groups, and that too when it is a normal distribution. So this is when we find out the t-test. Again, when the sample is small, it is a t-test. When the sample is large, it is a z-test. And please remember, for all this you have a table. So all that you are doing is trying to find out the critical values by using the table. What I suggest is, if you are interested in doing it manually, you can always go to an expert and learn how to learn from these tables. That is, how to find out the critical values from these tables. So it's always better that you know how to calculate it, okay, but more for a researcher is how do you interpret it. Okay, so if for us as researchers, interpretation becomes very important. So what happens, whatever value that we find out, okay, again, what did I tell? P value it should be less than the alpha value. So when we find out that p value is less than the alpha value, we can always say that the null hypothesis gets rejected. So ultimately our aim is to find out whether the null hypothesis gets rejected or it gets accepted. So that should be our main concern. Okay, now moving on to the F test. Now F test or the F distribution is used to compare variances, not the means. It's used to compare the variances of two independent samples. And please remember that F test is used in ANOVA. So when I'm telling you what is ANOVA, that time you will come to know that this F distribution or this F test is used to compare the variances of two independent samples. Now every time we cannot use t-test, because t-tests, the limitation of the t-test is only when there are two samples, but when there are more than two samples, it's very difficult to do multiple tests in t-test, because once you keep doing multiple tests, say for example I'm finding out relationship between A and B, B and C, C and A, what happens is my alpha value keeps increasing, and when my alpha value keeps increasing, the values whatever I get under the alpha, it's not statistically correct, or it doesn't yield results. So we never do multiple tests when it comes to t-test. In a t-test, only a single test is conducted to find out the significant difference of two means. So this is regarding the t-test and the z-test. So please remember, let us now not worry much about the f-test. Always you remember that to find out the relationship or to find out the significant difference, we use t-test. If to find out relationship, again we can use correlation. Okay, correlation is a very good measure to find out when it comes to relation or association. So whenever you want to find out significant difference, please remember you can use t-test or z-test. Now let us come to non-parametric methods. Now in case of non-parametric methods, it's usually used for nominal and ordinal data. Now let us say for example, again what I gave you now, is there any relationship between the income level and the education level? That is your nominal data. Any relationship between the income level and the education level. Okay, so suppose you're trying to state a hypothesis. Okay, is there any significant difference between the what is that, the income levels of male and female, or income levels of urban and rural? So if you want to find out like this, it's always better that you can use a chi-square test. So under a chi-square test, all that you are doing is trying to find out by comparing the observed frequencies and your actual, that is your theoretical frequencies. So you're trying to find out the difference. Again, please remember, chi-square test is used only for a non-parametric, that is a not normal distribution. So for a not normal distribution, you use a parametric test, a non-parametric test. Again, you have a lot of other tests which are used. Again, it depends on your type of research, but as far as possible, this chi-square test is mainly used. Even the scarce test is used because it finds out the cumulative frequency also, which chi-square does not. So you can use tests based on the normalcy. So if you find that your distribution is a normal distribution, go in for t-test, go in for z-test, and go in for f-test, again if it has different multiple that is dependent and independent variables. So where you want to find out the variances. So it depends on the kind of research that you are doing. Now, the kind of research that you are doing, usually when it comes to correlation or regression, if you're using those kind of techniques, okay, you're finding out the relationship between the constructs, then as far as possible, please use correlation and regression. Now, this correlation and regression will help you to find out the relationship. If you want to find out a significant difference, let us say when it comes to comparative studies, as I told you, let us say trying to compare the financial performance of, SBI and Bank of India. There is a significant difference in the financial performance of State Bank of India and Bank of India. If you want to find out that, you can use a t-test. So whenever you want to find out significant difference, it's very important that you use a t-test, or again, as I told you, a z-test. All values will be available. Okay, all that you have to do is compare the critical value with the p-value and then take the decision whether null hypothesis has to be accepted or rejected. Now, all that you will be showing under inferential statistics. And it's always better that under inferential statistics, while you are presenting, make sure that you are going objective wise. Okay, so objective also, not that all your objectives must be statistically proven. Usually what happens is, there are some where you will have to statistically test. There are some which you need not statistically test. Now let us say initially you're doing role of HR practices on well-being, so the first objective can be to understand the conceptual theoretical concepts relating to the role of HR practices and employee well-being. This can be your first objective. So not required that necessarily you should have a statistical. So first two objectives can be qualitative in nature. You can give a descriptive kind of analysis for that. Okay. Now, coming to the other objectives, make sure that it is objective wise. That means to say, for this objective, this is the analysis that is being done. This is how you can present your analysis. Now, when you are presenting your analysis, please do remember that there will be some statistical technique that you will be using for each and every objective. So there will be some kind of statistical tool or technique based on the objective. So and for every objective, first identify what kind of data you have collected, whether you have collected nominal data for it, whether you have collected ordinal data for it, or whether you have collected interval data for it. So for every question, please analyze that, and based on that only you have to decide whether it is a normal or not normal distribution. And again, after that, you have to use whichever technique you will be using. So it's a long process of deciding what statistical technique you have to be using. Now, suppose you are comparing only, let us say, two variables, that is bivariate. It's only a dependent and an independent variable, and you are trying to measure the association between the variables. It is always better you use correlation and regression analysis. This is the basic that usually we do. Now, let us say, for example, we want to find out whether there is any relationship between the experience of the employee and the salary paid to the employee, or the income of the employee. Whether there is any relationship between the experience of the employee and the income level of the employee. So what I want to show, as the income increases, okay, as the experience increases, the income level is also increasing. Okay, so I want to find out. So for that, I will have to use the regression analysis. Let us say I want to know whether the profit is dependent on the sales. Okay, so higher the sales, higher will be the profit. This is the kind of relationship I would like to find out. So for this, again, I can use a regression analysis where it is X on Y. So, as a researcher, I should be able to know what is the kind of technique that I will be using at every stage. This is, something as a researcher you need to know. Now, let us say, for example, in case of bivariate, if it is ranking, usually we use rho. Rho is your Spearman's rank correlation. That is a good technique for two variables. Now, suppose it is to find out the relationship between, sales and profit, or relationship between the experience and the income, or the education level and the, income. You want to find out this. For that, correlation and regression analysis will be apt. Okay, so under bivariate, usually the correlation and the regression analysis is used for two variables. Okay, so to find out the association or relationship. Suppose it is significant difference, we will go for t-test or z-test. So this is something which every researcher should know, and your hypothesis must always show significant difference or relationship. So whenever you're writing a hypothesis, please make sure that whatever variables you're taking, ultimately either you're finding out the relationship or you're finding out the significant difference. So whatever observed data we have, that data must disagree with the null hypothesis. That is our main aim. Our data should disagree with the null hypothesis. That is where, kind of we decide whether really we are going far away from, the data is very, very incompatible. So with, as the data keeps going far off, that means to say our null hypothesis keeps getting rejected. So as far as data becomes incompatible with the null hypothesis, then with the null hypothesis, only then the null hypothesis can be rejected. So please note here that as far as p-value is concerned, how p-value is how much of your data actually disagrees with your null hypothesis. This is what we are ultimately trying to prove. So that's why we say there is no relationship between income and experience. There is no relationship between education level and income. Okay, this is what we are, let us say, for example, there is no relationship between, health, yoga and, the immune system. I'm trying to find out something like that. There is no relationship between the diet and, let us say, diabetes. So I'm trying to find out the relationship. So under all these cases, I will use t-test. Okay. Now, next, let us come to the multivariate analysis. Now, when it comes to multivariate analysis, remember, especially for, mediator, when you're using mediator, moderators, for all this purpose, multivariate analysis is definitely useful. The other day, the first class, I think there were many who were asking me about what is the difference between mediator and moderator. Okay, you can go, I think that was the first paper I gave. If you remember in the WhatsApp, I've given one paper relating to mediator and moderator, and that is the paper written by Barron and Kenny when it comes to this mediator moderator analysis. So anybody who is taking up research exclusively on a mediator or a moderator, along with your independent and dependent variables, even if you're having control variables also, it's always better to please read that particular paper. It's a very good paper. Barron and Kenny, they have written up exclusively, it's a conceptual paper, they've written exclusively about the mediator and the moderator. So those who want to kind of do something because off late those are the kind of papers that are having more value. And why it has more value is always when you have dependent and independent variables, you're only trying to find out the direct effect. Okay, now I'm finding out the role of HR practices on the employee well-being. That is called as a direct effect. Now suppose I want to find out the indirect effect. Now indirect effect is adding either a mediator or a moderator, that is the focal point, to my dependent and independent variables. This is one area which which has more value now. That means to say, if you have, of course, if you have multiple variables, that's a different case. But if you're having, in the construct, if you're having less number of variables, you can always add in a mediator. Okay, that itself will help in understanding the research with a better statistical rigor. So when you are putting in a moderator or a mediator, you will have to study both the direct effect as well as the indirect effect. So when you are doing that, you can use lot of analysis like SEM analysis. You can use the path model. You can use something called as bootstrapping, where your data, I think, is replicated around 2000 times, 3000 times, and you get much accurate results. So today, if you take packages like SPSS and R, you can get a lot of information or statistical data. But the only thing for a researcher is how do we interpret that in terms of our research. So, statistics can only give us the numbers, but ultimately, trying to interpret out of these numbers is something that is really a big challenge for the researcher. So, this is where we have to kind of, equip ourselves. So, again, most of the techniques used under that correlation is something which is, used. And multiple correlation is used. So this kind of multiple correlation, I think if you take Carl Pearson's coefficient of correlation, you will get that multiple correlation table where you will have all the variables. You can compare the relationship, what is the level of association. For some you might get higher correlation. So suppose we say that from 0 to 1, if there is a correlation, 0 is where there is no correlation and 1 where there is perfect correlation. Of course, such things do not arise when it comes to our research. So ours may lie somewhere between, let us say, if it's 7, if it's a very good correlation. If it comes between, let us say, around 0.4 and 0.7, okay, we call it as a medium correlation. That means to say it's an average or a moderate correlation. That's the word we use. There's a moderate correlation. Suppose it is around 0.2 to 0.4, then we would say that in our analysis, that is what we give. The correlation between the variables exists, but to a very less extent. So this is how you will be writing. And below 1 and all, you say that correlation is very, very minimum, or correlation does not exists, but it's very, very negligible. So most important for a researcher is kind of writing the interpretation part of it. So as far as possible, I think Pearson's product moment coefficient of correlation is a very good correlation that can be used, especially when it comes to a doctoral research, even for in your papers when you are presenting. You can also use Carl Pearson's coefficient of correlation. So correlation is you kind of compare the association or the relationship between two variables. Now, an extension of correlation is your regression. And today, I think, as of today, regression is one area which has been extensively used. So whatever you take today, let us take ANOVA, t-test, f-test, MANOVA, MANCOVA, and ANACOVA. All these techniques are based on regression. All these techniques are based on regression. all of you know that regression is nothing but how an independent variable is related to the dependent variable. So again, here we are trying to find out the relationship. Now, in case of multiple regression, again, you can show a single dependent variable and you have multiple independent variables. So that is how you show regression. Please remember, techniques like ANOVA are based on regression. Okay. Now, analysis of variance is based on regression. Now, as I told you, there is a limitation when it comes to your which is that t-test. So t-test, usually what it does, it only is able to compare two means. So when it comes to more number of groups that we have to find out, then we use, for everything we use an extension of regression. Today, rather than having only regression, say for example you want to find out the model effects, the direct and the indirect effect. As of today, Hayes regression is used, Hayes. Hayes regression is very, very popular when it comes to finding out the direct and indirect effect, especially in case of mediators and moderators. So again, for all that, you have SPSS and R package, which will give you the results. The only thing is, based on the numbers, again, the correlation numbers, you will have to predict what is your variance. Now, the most important thing what you arrive when it comes to regression is your R square and adjusted R square. Now again, what is R square and adjusted R square? It's nothing but how you understand your explained variances and your unexplained variances. So it's nothing but the total of your explained variance divided by the total variance. So there are some limitations when it comes to R square. That means to say the model, when you add something new, there might be a certain change. So when you add certain variables, you might have a problem. So that is why, along with R square, you also have the adjusted R square being calculated. Now, suppose I say, usually R square and adjusted R square, they come between 0 and 100%. So suppose I get an R square of, let us say 40%. That means to say 40% of my, or 0.4. So 40% of my data fits into that particular regression model. That is analysis. So what do you interpret out of that? Now that is based again on your study. So especially when you're studying numbers like this, that's why I told you, please keep previous papers. Now see, now let us say for example, you might find that I might tell you that 0.6% is an ideal high, association. But when you look into previous papers, you might find that, the highest, fit has been only to the extent of 40%. So you have to give an interpretation saying that based on these previous papers, this was the value that they got and our value is so much. So this will be, this will come under your inferences. So while you're drawing conclusions, it is very, very important for you to also note what are, just a minute, I want to mute all the participants.
అమ్మాయిని సాయంత్రం తీగలు వేసుకుని ఆయన గుడికి తెచ్చుకోవచ్చు.
relationship, please make sure it was unmuted all the while. Okay. Now, what do you mean by this 40% and 60%? Now, that is how much of your data fits into your model, your regression model. Now, please remember that whenever you're writing, it's very, once you get the values of R square and adjusted R square, these are two important values that are very necessary in order to find out what percentage of your data fits the regression model. So it's very important for you to find out these two. Now, once you find out the R square and the adjusted R square when it comes to the regression model, and also I told you if it's a mediator moderator, you need to use Hayes regression. Now, when you are doing all this, the most important thing is to write the interpretation. Now, as I told you, whatever is the value that you get, you must say that so much percentage of it fits into your data, fits into your regression model. So higher the percentage, the better the data fits into the model. Now, lower the data, lower the fit, you can always find out why there is no relationship, what are the reasons, or you go back to the previous papers and find out what is their R square. This is something that is very, very important. So what was the R square that they calculated? But that is why in statistics what they do is along with R square, they also calculate the adjusted R square so that they find out, almost you will find that your R square and adjusted R square are almost the same, so that it shows that any data added also there will not be much change in the adjusted R square. So this is when we use for regression. Now the next one that we use is your ANOVA. Now please note, when is that we use ANOVA? As I told you, the drawback of t-test is when we have multiple groups, we cannot do the t-test because there will be a lot of problems. So we can use it only when there are two groups. When there are more than two groups, we use ANOVA. Now, I'll just give you a very small example. Maybe it will help you to understand what is ANOVA. Let us say we are trying to find out let us say there are health practices. Now let us say one person does yoga for 3 hours in a day, just illusionary an example. Let us say a person does 3 hours of yoga in a day and he has the best fit immune system. So we want to know whether we want to know whether this kind of same, is there any significant difference between the immune system of a person doing yoga for 3 hours and the immune system of a person who is not doing yoga at all. So we want to know whether there is a significant difference. Now let us say we add one more group. Another group is, let us say, doing for 5 hours in a day. Now we want to know whether again there will be a difference in the immune system of those people who are doing yoga for 5 hours. So now how many groups we have? We have 3 groups. Now if we have 3 groups like this, we can use the technique called as ANOVA. So when do we use t-test? We can use the t-test only when there are 2 groups. When there are more than 2 groups, we use what is called as ANOVA. And please remember that F distribution, what we have taken under the parametric tests, that is of normal, that means to say if it is a normal distribution, under parametric test we saw the F distribution. Now if it is ANOVA, then we are going to follow the F distribution. So if you are finding out ANOVA values, please you have to go to the F distribution and find out your critical values. Again, ANOVA is a regression of it's an extension of regression. And I think in SPSS package, if you go to GLM1, This ANOVA is called as GLM1. That is where you can calculate. So, ANOVA helps you to find out when there are, many independent variables that you are calculating for one dependent variable. It is that time you use ANOVA. Now, let us say, for example, you have income level, you have, education level, you want to, find out relating to service, all this, whether it is enhancing the role of the HR manager. Okay. So at that time, when there are multiple dependent variables, then you can use ANOVA. Okay. Now, when do we use MANOVA? MANOVA is used when there are several independent variables and when there are several dependent variables. ANCOVA is used when there are covariances. Now, please remember that when there is a standard deviation, okay, you are having standard deviation, then we use a correlation. When there are no standard deviations, that means to say when you have unstandardized beta. So if you have standardized beta, you use correlation. That means to say when you have standard deviation, you use correlation. When you do not have standard deviation, that means to say when you have unstandardized beta values, you are going to use covariances. So when you are using covariances in order to find out the variances, okay, of dependent and independent variables, ANCOVA is used. And again, what is MANCOVA? Different multiple dependent variables, multiple independent variables for the covariances is called as MANCOVA. Now again, all this, I'm just giving you the definitions because it depends on your research. That's why initially I asked you for certain examples. So if you could give me the example of your research, I can tell you what is the technique that you should use or you will have to use. Maybe if not today, you can, at a later stage also, since I've given you my email ID, you can always write to me and then, you can decide on which tool is appropriate for your particular study. Okay. So when there are, when you have to use ANOVA. Now, please remember when you're using ANOVA, you will be using an F distribution. When the sample is less than 30, you will be using a t-test. When the sample is more than 30, you will be using a z-test. Now, when you are comparing two variables, you will be using correlation. When you're finding whether there is an association or dependency of the independent variable on the dependent variable, then you will be finding out for regression. So each one, it is entirely based on the study. It is entirely based on the objectives of the study. So when you are formulating your objectives, make sure that for each objective, while you are framing it itself, you should know which is the statistical technique that you are using. So again, here you will be able to find out with the help of your research guide and with the help of a statistician. Please, while you're framing objectives itself, see what happens is, statisticians are never, you go to the statistician after you've collected the data, or you start learning statistics after you have collected the data, which is very, very wrong. At every stage, if you are doing quantitative analysis, at every stage you should know what is the statistical tool or technique you will be using. Okay. Now, like I told you yesterday, something like your scale development and validation. Okay. Your dimension retention. Let us say, for example, now you are studying what are the factors affecting the economic, recession due to COVID-19. Okay. You want to do a study on that. Best is you can do dimension summarization, because there are a lot of dimensions now what you can take. The entire economy has taken a twist. So what you can do, you can definitely develop a scale for that, and you can go in for a scale validation. Now, even before you're collecting data. Okay, so for these kind of, economy, now what our economy is going through, you can do a scale development on certain aspects. Okay, and then you can identify what are the various factors. Now, once you identify a number of factors, you need to group these factors. and you have to do what is called as dimension reduction. That means to say what are the factors really affecting you, take it into consideration. Now all this can be done under factor analysis. Again, factor analysis is available both in your SPSS and R. I think under SPSS they have mainly both the methods are there. Centroid method also is there and principal component method is there. I think they find out what are the factor loadings, okay. So how closely the variables are related, that is what they find out there, and then the eigenvalues found out. And then they do the oblique rotation, and then they will tell you whether the loading is very high on each factor. If the loading is high, you consider the factors, and then they do a lot of rotations where you will be finding out what are the groupings and whether that factor has to be considered or not. So mainly factor analysis is used for scale development. It is used for conceptualization process, conceptualization of ideas, then your index creation. For all these purposes, factor analysis is used. Now for factor analysis, again, you have exploratory factor analysis and confirmatory factor analysis, which can also be done, especially when it comes to your scale development. So these are new areas which a researcher can explore when it comes to either doing a research paper or if you want to do a thesis. So this is one very important model which I would like to state. You have path analysis plus measurement of the path, that is called as your SEM. It's called as the structural equation model. It can be used only if you already have correlated values. So already if you have correlation, then only you can use SEM. So you should have that multiple correlation table. Only from that table you can use this SEM. Now, why SEM is used? So what happens is there are two types of variables. One is called as observable variables, that is I can observe them, and some are called as latent variables. Now latent variables are called as your hidden variables. Okay, so you can do research from latent to manifested. Manifested is something that is observable. So latent to manifested variables, and from manifested to latent variables. So you can formulate kind of formative indicators and reflective indicators, and see how they have an effect, that is the dependent and the independent variables. SEM is a very, very good technique where it's an extension of your correlation and regression. So if you want to find out again the direct effect and the indirect effect, you can use SEM analysis. Again, there are a lot of analysis what you can do. You have discriminant analysis, you have canonical analysis, you have cluster analysis, you have content analysis. So many analyses are there. The thing is, you take up a particular statistical technique based on your study. So, it is mainly dependent on the study for the researcher. But of course, for every study, testing of hypothesis is there. So you will be having either the t-test or you will be having correlation and regression if you have to test your hypothesis. Or if it is only nominal and ordinal data, you will be doing chi-square test or KS test if it's a not normal distribution. These are something which are very, very basic. But apart from that, nowadays, if you want to, show statistical rigor, then you can use different, type of analysis. There are a lot of statistical tools for that, especially when it comes to SPSS and R. Again, as a researcher, what I felt most important is, you will know what is that statistical technique, but writing the interpretation is very, very important. Especially once you get those numbers, how you interpret those numbers become very, very important for you. So if you are, kind of using statistical tools, please remember, once you get that particular numbers, you should be able to kind of interpret what it is. Now let us say, for example, you are having SEM. you get good index and bad index. So the good index might be measured in terms of I don't know, CFI, GFI, TLI. They are all called as good indicators, and you have poor indicators like RMSCA and SRMR. Root mean square appropriation, something like that. So once we take these values, interpreting them to our research, that is the most important work of a researcher. So ultimately, once you are getting it, it's very important for you to consult experts. Make sure that you are collecting the data, whatever you have collected as data, you are able to analyze it well. So and writing the analysis and interpretation is very, very important, apart from getting those values. So as I told you, as far as possible, make sure that you are able to take out some of the previous researches, find out what are the results that they have got. So 2 to 3 papers, as I told you, please keep it as the basis for writing your particular analysis and interpretation. This is something that is very important. Of course, at the end, I've just given what is the difference between the mediator and a moderator. If somebody wants to use, usually moderators are used as control variables. Okay, and mediators again to show the direct and the indirect effect. So if anybody wants to take up studies, again, I told you further, you can read on Barron and Kenny. Some of you might also use time series as a statistical technique in order to find out, the data, especially when it comes to, longitudinal data. You can use trend analysis. Especially when it comes to financial data, you can use trend analysis. Now, the last part I've just given you, what is the test to be used and what is the kind of analysis. Maybe this will help you out in, suppose you get your research, it will help you in finding out, which test has to be used for what kind of analysis. As I told you, when you're doing data analysis, make sure that you're preparing a data analysis plan. That is something that is very important. One drawback for me was, I was able to cover only social and psychological factors as far as possible when it came to this entire study. I know that many of you, you have taken up finance as your important area, and you will mainly be using econometrics and time series data. So what we covered mainly was psychometric, because mostly in psychometrics it's quite difficult because the constructs are abstract, so you need to make the constructs measurable. But as far as statistics is concerned, today you have a lot of packages. You have Smart PLS, you have SPSS, you have R, you have SEM, you have AMOS. So a lot of statistical tools are available. Even for econometrics, you have eView, you have Stats. R again is used for econometrics. Then you have Tableau, which helps you in data visualization. So as of today, as far as statistics is concerned, there is plenty of support that is available for a researcher. But the only thing is, for a researcher, interpretation of this analysis is a challenging task. So as far as possible, I've tried to cover testing of hypothesis and what are the different statistical tools that are available. I know because of the time constraint, I'm not been able to do justice to each and everything in detail. But for a researcher, what is important, that I have covered. So as a researcher, what is that you need to know? So later on, you can go to a statistician, learn how to find out critical values. This is something what you can learn. Okay, you can also learn how, especially when it comes to normal distribution and non-normal distribution, a better clarity on what is ordinal, nominal, and interval data. All this, you can always interact with experts and find out, or you can attend other workshops on that. You see, one workshop is not sufficient. It's a continuous process. So day in and day out, it should be an ongoing learning process. So to the best of my ability, I've kind of tried to summarize in the form of this table as to what exactly a researcher needs to know. So we will wind up for today. If there are any questions, you can just put it on the chat box. And also tomorrow, as I told you, for each and every, I will be showing you the entire report, and for each and every aspect, I'll be showing you how it has to be presented. And I'll show you, these are the flaws that usually a researcher makes. How is that you need to correct these kind of flaws? So all that also I will be showing it to you, especially when it comes to presentation of the research, because ultimately, as I told you, planning is 40%, your execution is around 45%, but the remaining 15% is your writing. So, that specific and clear writing, that is what we need to know. So, thank you. Thank you for a patient hearing. So, tomorrow we meet again. Today, I will be sending you all the PPTs. So today I will be sending you the PPTs so that you get the entire PDF, and then because tomorrow I will not be having any PPT. So today I will be having PPT, and by evening I will send you everything. Okay.